I accidentally attended the winged princess's wedding. She said, "You are the groom now." Elia's ward had never planned to attend a wedding. He had planned to stand quietly at the edge of a floating stone platform, record cultural data, and return to his ship without anyone truly noticing him. That was the mission. Observe, learn, leave, but nothing ever went as planned when humans met the wider galaxy. Eralis was unlike any world Elias had studied before. The planet had no true ground, only layers of floating land held aloft by invisible atmospheric forces. Wide stone platforms drifted through pale blue skies, connected by streams of wind that carried sound and light in strange ways. Above and below him, winged beings moved effortlessly, their feathers shining like polished metal under the distant sun. They were beautiful, intimidating, and ancient. Elias adjusted the collar of his exploration suit, forcing himself to breathe slowly. The suit systems confirmed what his own senses already knew. The air was thin but breathable, the gravity slightly weaker than Earth's, and the constant upward pull of the planet's sky field pressed gently against his body, as if the world itself wanted him to float away. The winged people Erelans were gathering in great numbers. Their wings folded respectfully as they landed, feathers brushing stone with soft sounds. Colors marked status and lineage: silver for elders, deep blues for warriors, gold for the royal bloodline. At the center of the platform stood the princess, Princess Seraphil of Eralis. She was taller than most, her wings wide and powerful even at rest. Gold feathers framed her face, and a circlet of living crystal hovered just above her brow, responding to her thoughts. Her expression was calm, unreadable, as if nothing in the universe could truly surprise her. Elias had seen her only in recordings. In person, she felt heavier, not in body but in presence. He reminded himself again, do not interact. The ceremony had already begun when Elias arrived. Music carried through the air, not played by instruments, but shaped by wings moving through carefully controlled wind currents. The sound was soft, layered, and emotional in a way he could not fully explain. He stood where he was told to stand, behind a line of observers, near a carved stone marker etched with symbols he had not yet translated. As the ceremony progressed, the Erelans moved in patterns, circling the princess and her intended groom. The groom was a proud warrior with deep blue feathers and scars across his wings. He looked confident, certain of his place. Elias watched carefully, recording gestures and movements. At one point, an elder turned toward the observers and raised a wing in a slow, deliberate motion. Elias hesitated. His translation implant offered a suggestion, acknowledgement gesture. Wanting to appear respectful, Elias mirrored what he thought was the correct response. He placed his hand over his chest and inclined his head slightly, following similar movements he had seen earlier. The wind changed. Elias felt it before he heard anything. The air around him shifted, tightening, as if invisible threads had pulled suddenly taut. A low hum spread across the platform, vibrating through stone and bone alike. Every Erelan froze. The music stopped. The groom's wings twitched in confusion. Elders turned sharply, their eyes locking onto Elias. Whispers spread like ripples through the air. Elias' heart began to race. He checked his implant. No warnings, no errors. Then the princess turned. Her gaze settled on him, sharp and focused. The crystal circlet above her brow flared with pale light. For a long moment she said nothing. The hum deepened. Then in clear, carefully pronounced common trade language she spoke. "The oath has responded." Gasps echoed through the gathering. Elias swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, raising his hand slightly. "If I've offended." "You have not offended," Seraphil said, her voice calm but strong. "You have been recognized." Recognized. An elder stepped forward, wings trembling slightly. "Princess," the elder said in their native tongue, "this is not possible. He is not of the sky." "The oath does not speak falsely," Seraphil replied. The air shimmered beside Elias, forming lines of light that twisted together into symbols older than the conquered itself. Elias stared as the patterns wrapped briefly around his arm, warm but not painful, then faded. The elder's face went pale. "The groom stands before us," Seraphil announced. Silence fell like a physical weight. Elias' mind struggled to keep up. "I what?" he said, his voice cracking despite his effort to stay calm. The original groom took a step forward, feathers bristling. "This is absurd," he said sharply. "He cannot even fly." Seraphil finally showed a flicker of emotion interest. "He does not need wings," she said. "The oath has chosen." Elia's suit began feeding him rapid translations as voices rose around him. Words like bond, skylaw, and irreversible repeated again and again. An elder approached Elias slowly. "Human," the elder said, eyes searching his face. "Did you knowingly perform the consort's recognition?" "No," Elias said immediately. "I didn't know what it was. I was just trying to be respectful." Murmurs spread again. Seraphil studied him closely now. "Intent matters to the oath," she said. "You acted without deception." That did not sound comforting. Elias was escorted not roughly but firmly to the center of the platform. The crowd parted around him, their expressions ranging from shock to suspicion to something dangerously close to awe. The original groom stood rigid, fists clenched. "I challenge this," he said. "The human does not understand our ways." Seraphil turned to him. "Understanding is not required," she replied. "Only truth." The sky shifted again. The floating lands above them glowed faintly, responding to unseen forces. Elias felt a pressure behind his eyes like a door opening slowly. Suddenly he could sense patterns in the air, currents, tensions, flows of energy he had never noticed before. It was overwhelming but not painful. "What is happening to me?" he whispered. "You are being acknowledged by the sky," Seraphil said quietly, stepping closer. "Do not resist it." Against all logic, Elias realized he wasn't afraid of her. He was afraid of what this meant for everyone else. The elders argued among themselves, voices sharp and fast. Elias caught fragments through the implant. If the bond is accepted, to reject it would endanger Eralis itself. The original groom looked as if he had been struck. Slowly he bowed and stepped back, humiliation written across his features. Elias turned to Seraphil. "Princess," he said, choosing his words carefully, "I did not come here seeking power, status, or marriage. I don't even belong on your world." She met his gaze steadily. "And yet," she said, "you stand where no outsider ever has." The platform beneath them pulsed softly like a heartbeat. Seraphil lowered her voice. "This union was meant to be political," she admitted. "A binding of clans, not souls. The oath refused it." Elias frowned. "Why choose me?" Her wings shifted slightly. "That," she said, "is what I wish to learn." A sudden cry rang out as the sky above them darkened. A ripple passed through the floating lands, uneven and unstable. Several aerolands stumbled as the wind surged unpredictably. The elders exchanged worried looks. "The sky field is reacting strongly," one said. "It has not done so in generations." Elias steadied himself, instincts from years of space travel kicking in. "Something's wrong with your system," he said without thinking. Seraphil turned sharply. "Explain." "I don't fully understand it yet," Elias said, breathing hard, "but this feels like feedback, like an old system being pushed beyond what it was designed for." The elders stared at him. Humans were known across the galaxy for many things: strength, stubbornness, survival. But this, reading the sky like machinery, Seraphil looked at him with new intensity. "Then you will remain," she said. "Not as a prisoner, not as a ruler," she paused, "but as the groom recognized by the oath until the truth is uncovered." The sky hummed again, softer this time, as if in agreement. Elias looked out over the floating world at a civilization held aloft by forces it barely questioned anymore. He had come to observe. Instead, he had been chosen. And somewhere deep in the sky itself, something ancient had noticed humanity and decided it was time for change. Elias did not sleep that night. The chambers given to him were wide and open, built from pale stone that floated slightly above the platform floor. There were no walls in the way humans understood them, only curved barriers of light and slow-moving air. From where he sat, he could see the endless sky of Eralis stretching in all directions, broken only by distant floating lands and glowing wind paths. On Earth, silence meant emptiness. Here, silence felt alive. Elias sat on the edge of the resting platform, hands clasped together, trying to steady his thoughts. Every few moments he felt it again, that strange awareness of the sky. He could sense the pressure of air currents, the pull of the planet's field, the subtle imbalance that made everything tremble just a little. It reminded him of old ships. Ships held together by systems no one truly trusted anymore, running far past their intended lifetimes. A soft sound announced someone approaching. Elias looked up as Seraphil landed nearby, her wings folding with practiced ease. She wore no crown now, only a simple band of crystal at her wrist. "You should be resting," she said. "I've tried," Elias replied. "My mind won't slow down." She studied him for a moment, then sat across from him, folding her wings close. The sky rarely grants peace on the first night. He hesitated. Is that something your people say? No, she replied honestly. It is something I am learning from you. That caught him off guard. Seraphil looked out into the distance. Since childhood, I was taught the oath is perfect, eternal, beyond question. It chooses what must be. And now, Elias asked. And now it chose a human who did not know the rules, she said. Which means the rules were never complete. Elias let out a slow breath. On my world, we learned long ago that systems don't fail loudly at first. They fail quietly, slowly, until someone asks the wrong question. Seraphil turned to him. You believe the oath is failing. I believe it's tired, Elias said, and no one noticed. The next days passed quickly. Elias was not treated like a prisoner, but he was never alone. Elders observed him. Scholars questioned him. Warriors watched him with open suspicion. Everywhere he walked, wings rustled and whispers followed. He learned that the oath was not only law but infrastructure. It stabilized the floating lands. It balanced the sky field. It guided weather, migration, and even reproduction cycles. It had been created thousands of years ago. No one alive truly understood how. Elias worked with Aralan scholars in open sky halls, using holographic projections and simple diagrams. He avoided complex language, choosing clarity over pride. This, he said, pointing to a shifting energy model, is a feedback loop. When demand increases, the system responds harder instead of smarter. An elder frowned. The oath responds with strength because strength preserves order. Strength without adjustment causes collapse, Elias replied gently. I've seen it happen more than once. The scholars watched as he mapped fluctuations they had ignored for generations. Patterns emerged, instability zones, delays in response. Seraphil stood beside him, silent, absorbing everything. One evening, alarms rippled through the sky. A distant floating land dipped suddenly, its stabilizing currents weakening. Panic spread as winged figures rushed to reinforce it manually. Elias felt the imbalance instantly. It's overcorrecting, he said. The oath is pushing too hard. What do we do? An elder demanded. Elias closed his eyes, focusing on the strange connection he now carried. We stop forcing it. He stepped forward, placing his hand into the open air where the energy patterns were strongest. The hum intensified, resisting him. Elias, Seraphil warned. I'm not fighting it, he said through clenched teeth. I'm listening. Instead of pushing commands, he slowed his thoughts. He imagined the sky as a system asking for rest, not orders. Gradually, the pressure eased. The floating land steadied. Gasps echoed around them. Elias staggered back, exhausted but standing. The elders stared at him as if seeing a new species entirely. He did not command the oath, one whispered. He cooperated with it. From that moment on, resistance softened. Not all opposition vanished. Some clans still rejected the idea of a human consort. Some saw Elias as a threat to tradition. But the sky itself responded to him, and on Eralis, that mattered more than opinion. Seraphil and Elias spoke often during this time. Not as rulers and subjects, but as two people caught in a turning world. You could leave, she said one night, once stability is restored. I could, Elias agreed, but running systems don't like sudden absence, she smiled faintly. You speak of the sky as if it were alive. Anything that complex usually is, he replied. The final test came sooner than expected. A major sky convergence approached, an event that happened once every few centuries when atmospheric forces aligned. The oath was meant to guide it safely. Instead, it faltered. Floating lands shook. Wind paths twisted violently. The sky darkened as energy surged unpredictably. If the oath collapses, an elder said grimly, Eralis will fall. Seraphil turned to Elias. Can you guide it? Elias looked up at the churning sky. Fear gripped him, but beneath it was resolve. I can't control it, he said. But I can help it learn. They brought him to the highest platform, where the sky field was strongest. Elias stood at the center, surrounded by elders and warriors with Seraphil beside him. He reached out with his mind, not forcing, not demanding. He fed the oath patterns, simple ones, human ones, adapt, adjust, fail safely, try again. The sky resisted at first, surging wildly. Elias felt pain behind his eyes, his body trembling. Stay with me, Seraphil said, placing her hand over his. Her presence anchored him. Slowly, the chaos softened. The sky's movements became smoother. The convergence passed, not perfectly, but safely. When it was over, the world exhaled. Light returned to the sky. Floating land stabilized. The hum of the oath settled into a new, quieter rhythm. Silence followed. Then one by one the elders bowed. Seraphil turned to Elias, her expression no longer distant or ceremonial. "The oath has changed," she said. "Because of you." Elias shook his head. "Because of us." In the days that followed, a new role was declared, not groom, not ruler, but bridge speaker. One who listened between worlds, between systems, between traditions and change. Elias accepted it, not because he wanted power, but because humanity had always survived by stepping into broken systems and making them better. As the stars above Eralis shifted, messages spread quietly across the galaxy. Humans could not fly, but they could understand the sky. And sometimes that was more powerful than wings. Time passed differently on Eralis after the sky learned to listen. Elias felt it in the quiet moments. The hum that once pressed against his thoughts now flowed gently, like a calm engine running in the background. The floating lands no longer shook without warning. The wind paths moved with purpose instead of habit. The world was still ancient, but it was no longer stuck. Elias walked along a narrow sky bridge, his boots touching stone warmed by the sun. Below him, clouds drifted slowly, glowing faintly as energy passed through them. Above him, winged figures crossed the open sky, their movements relaxed in a way he had never seen before. They were no longer afraid of falling. Seraphil landed beside him, folding her wings with ease. She had changed too, not in appearance but in presence. She no longer carried the weight of forced tradition alone. "You are thinking loudly again," she said. Elias smiled slightly. "Human habit." She looked out over the horizon. The clans are still adjusting, some fear the oath's change. "Change always scares people," Elias said, "even when it saves them." Seraphil nodded. "They ask if the sky will choose outsiders again." "And?" Elias asked. She glanced at him. "I tell them the sky chooses honesty. Species is irrelevant." That answer unsettled many. Across the galaxy, news traveled fast. Humans were already known as survivors, builders, problem solvers. But now there were stories of a world held up by the sky itself, saved not by force but by understanding. Delegations arrived, tall crystalline beings who spoke in harmonic tones, insected diplomats wrapped in ceremonial light, synthetic minds carried by hovering frames. They came to see the human who spoke to a planet. Elias hated the attention. He met them anyway. He did not give speeches about superiority. He did not claim authority. He explained the same simple idea again and again. "Systems fail when no one listens to them," he said. "People fail the same way." Some understood, some didn't. But they all noticed one thing. The sky responded when Elias was present. One day, during a gathering of off-world observers, a sudden energy spike rippled through a distant floating land. Before alarms could sound, Elias stopped walking. "There," he said quietly. Eralan engineers reacted instantly, adjusting stabilizers before any damage occurred. The observers exchanged uneasy looks. Humans did not have wings, yet one of them could feel a planet breathe. That scared them more than weapons ever had. Not all reactions were peaceful. Far beyond Eralis, a coalition of expansionist powers took interest. They had relied on ancient systems too, stellar gates, planetary shields, resource stabilizers. If humans could rewrite living infrastructure, they could become dangerous. A message arrived, wrapped in formal threat and polite language, an invitation to share methods. Elias read it carefully, then closed the display. "They want control," Seraphil said. "They want certainty," Elias replied, "and humans learned long ago that certainty breaks things." The answer sent back was simple. There were no methods to give, only a way of thinking. Some accepted that, others did not. Tension grew in the wider galaxy, but Eralis remained calm. For the first time in generations, the sky world was not reacting to fear. It was reacting to balance. Elias continued his work, training Eralan scholars to listen to fluctuations instead of suppressing them. Children were taught not just tradition, but curiosity. One young Eralan asked him, "Will the sky forget us if you leave?" Elias crouched to meet the child's gaze. "No, it's learning to remember itself." That answer spread. Years passed. Elias aged. Seraphil did not. The difference was visible now. Lines marked Elias' face. His movement slowed slightly. But his connection to the sky did not weaken. If anything, it deepened. One evening, as stars shifted overhead, Elias stood alone on the highest platform. The sky hummed softly around him, familiar and warm. Seraphil joined him quietly. You know your time is changing, she said gently. Elias nodded. I do. The sky pulsed faintly, reacting to the emotion neither of them spoke aloud. When you are gone, she said, the galaxy will still remember you as the groom chosen by the oath. Elias shook his head. I hope they remember something else. She waited. That humans didn't conquer the sky, he said. We listened to it. When Elias finally left Eralis, it was not dramatic. There was no collapse, no chaos. The sky remained stable. The oath continued, not as an unchanging law, but as a living partner. From time to time, it still reached out, curious. And somewhere far away on a small human world, an old man would pause, smile faintly, and look up at the sky, feeling a distant world breathe. The galaxy recorded the event carefully, not as a conquest, not as a marriage, but as the moment everyone realized that humanity's greatest strength was never domination. It was understanding broken things and staying long enough to fix them. Elias thought he understood what it meant to leave Eralis. He was wrong. Even light years away, aboard a quiet human research station orbiting a calm yellow star, he still felt the sky. Not the sky above him, but the memory of another one, alive, listening, patient. It was not a voice in his head. It was more like knowing when a storm was coming before the clouds formed. Age had slowed his body, but not his mind. The station was small, built for rest and study, not importance. Elias liked it that way. He spent his days teaching young researchers, answering careful questions, and refusing titles that kept appearing in official messages. They called him many things. Sky listener, bridge speaker, the human who changed a world. He accepted none of them. To Elias, he had simply stayed when something was breaking. One evening, as the station rotated into shadow, an alert chimed softly. Elias frowned and checked the console. The signal was faint, encoded in a way he had not seen before, but he felt it before he decoded it. Eralis. Not a crisis, not panic, confusion. Elias sat down slowly, hands resting on the console. The message unfolded in layered patterns, not words alone, but flows of data shaped like weather models and emotional markers. Seraphal's presence was there, not her voice, but her intent. The sky was changing again, not failing, growing. Eralis had begun to influence nearby space. The adaptive sky field, once limited to the planet, was expanding in subtle ways. Trade routes passing close felt smoother. Ships reported reduced stress on hulls and systems. Even species with no connection to Eralis felt calmer near it, though none could explain why. The galaxy had noticed, and now some were afraid. Elias closed his eyes. Growth always frightened those who preferred control. A transport was prepared quietly. Elias did not announce his return. He did not need to. By the time his ship entered Eralis' space, the sky had already reached for him, adjusting paths and currents to guide him safely. He stepped onto the floating platform with a familiar ache in his joints and a strange peace in his chest. Seraphil was there waiting. She had not changed much. He had changed enough for both of them. You felt it, she said, not as a question. I did, Elias replied. It's learning faster now, she nodded. Too fast, some say. They walked together along a wide platform, the wind gentle around them. Below, Erelans worked alongside visitors from other worlds, studying new patterns forming in the sky field. It is no longer only ours, Seraphil said quietly. That was always going to happen, Elias said. Healthy systems share their strength. She stopped walking and faced him. And if the galaxy tries to take it, Elias met her gaze. Then we remind them that understanding can't be stolen. Meetings followed. Representatives arrived, polite and tense. They spoke of regulation, containment, ownership. They wanted guarantees, controls, limits. Elias listened patiently. When they finished, he asked one simple question. Why do you think the sky listens here? They gave many answers: technology, ancient design, royal blood. Elias shook his head. It listens because it's allowed to change. Silence followed. You can't copy that, he continued. You can only practice it. Some left frustrated, others stayed to learn. A moment came weeks later when the sky field pulsed sharply, stronger than ever before. Panic spread briefly, but Elias remained calm. This isn't collapse, he said. It's connection. The adaptive field had reached a tipping point. It was no longer just reacting to Eralis. It was responding to patterns beyond it, ships, stations, even distant planetary systems. A network was forming, not controlled, shared. The first proof came when a failing orbital habitat near a distant star stabilized unexpectedly. No direct link, No command signal, just balance. News spread fast. Fear followed. A coalition fleet moved toward Eralis, not in attack, but in threat. They demanded the skyfield be limited, cut back, isolated. Seraphil stood before them, wings wide but relaxed. Elias stood beside her, smaller, slower, human. "You fear losing control," Elias said calmly. "I understand. Humans feared that once too." "What gives you the right to reshape the galaxy?" a representative demanded. Elias answered honestly, "Nothing, that's why it's working." The sky responded not with force, but with stillness. The fleet felt it immediately, systems balancing, tensions easing, aggressive impulses fading. No one was compelled, but no one could ignore it. The coalition withdrew, not defeated, changed. Elias knew then his time was truly ending. Not because he was dying, though that would come, but because the sky no longer needed him as a guide. It had learned the pattern. It would continue without his presence. On his final night on Eralis, Elias stood alone at the edge of a floating land, watching stars move slowly across the sky. Seraphil joined him, her wings brushing the air softly. "You will be remembered," she said. Elias smiled faintly. "Then I hope memory stays gentle." The sky hummed, warm, steady, alive. For the first time, Elias did not listen. He simply rested. And across the galaxy, systems adjusted quietly, peacefully, as if remembering something they had almost forgotten. That change did not begin with power. It began with a human who walked into a wedding by accident and stayed long enough to teach the sky how to grow.